Podcasting from Singapore and broadcasting all around the world. You're listening to the EdTech Chat Podcast, taking the pulse of educators from all over the globe and bringing what you need every week. Now, over to your host, Craig Kemp.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the EdTech Chat Podcast. I'm your host, Craig Kemp, and I'm thrilled to have your support. I continue to work with the incredibly talented Mark Quinn to improve the final audio quality of this podcast. He has his own podcast production studio that provides editing and mastering services to content creators. To connect with Mark, please see the details in the podcast notes below. As I've mentioned before, I've grown my Ignite EdTech consultancy team to include some of the best EdTech leaders from all over the globe. Each week, I want to take a few minutes to introduce a new member of the team that you may like to chat to about supporting you in your school or company. Today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Andrew Mowat. Let's have a listen to our brief chat. Thank you for joining me today, Andrew. As a valued member of the Ignite EdTech consulting team, you work with schools all over the world to help them thrive in many different ways. Tell us a little bit about your current role, your experience, and your areas of expertise.
Thanks, Craig. It's great to be on. My current role is a principal partner in MetaLearn Education, and this is a company that provides training and development opportunities, particularly into schools. I've got a long history as a past principal and director of IT at the Australian School. I've also worked at the level of leading learning and development for the company that owns a number of schools around the world. I'm passionate about particularly the brain and the way we understand learning and the way that happens in the brain. And then how that supports two key areas, how it supports conversation and how we can be better at saying what needs to be said, and how it supports leadership, particularly leading from the middle. So they're my main areas of work at the moment.
And it's really inspirational, Andrew, what you do. What are you most passionate about in education right now?
It comes back to knowing about the brain. There's so little that we understand when we deliver learning, when we deliver conversation, when we try to lead a team. There's so little knowledge we have, working knowledge of this black box, the brain that we have. So I'm super passionate about helping people understand the mechanisms that are going on, the processes that are going on, and even some of the neurobiology that's going on so that we can be better. It's like knowing how to drive a car so you can drive a car better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And the work you do, not just with schools, but with EdTech companies, you often help them succeed and thrive. Tell us a time or give us an example of when you helped others succeed and thrive.
So one of the main ones that is really tangible is helping people develop new ways of saying what needs to be said. We're not particularly good at giving feedback, and feedback is inextricably linked to learning. And so if we've got a team of people, we need to know how to deliver and receive feedback so that it improves us individually and the team. And the biggest impact I've had in that domain is helping people rewire their language, the language of delivering feedback and the mental processes of receiving feedback so we can leverage learning and improvement. And this is having a big impact in the way teams are being led. We're not very good at giving adults feedback, and that's something we need to improve.
And Andrew, how do you help schools as a consultant, and how would schools and EdTech companies benefit from working with you?
One of the key ways that's emerging in the last few months, particularly around the pressure of COVID, is delivering professional learning in a way that is much more brain-friendly and that it fits the cadence and calendar of a school. Our traditional approach to delivering PD is broken. We can't deliver in a full or half-day session anymore. And this actually is not the best way to help people grow. There's very little integration that happens with that. So both EdTech companies and schools can reshape the way that they deliver professional learning in smaller power chunks, what I call power PD sessions that can fit into the calendar and the cadence of a school, completely negate the need for people to be withdrawn from program and all the problems that that creates, and deliver better learning and adoption over a faster period of time. So I'm increasing the amount of consulting and training around how to create these little power pack sessions that are delivered frequently. And that's where a lot of interest is growing at the moment, Craig.
Thank you for joining me today, Andrew. I really appreciate it. For more information about Andrew and the rest of the Ignite EdTech consulting team and how to inquire, visit www.igniteedtech.com/our team. The link is in the description below. This week, I want you to think about what technology does for you every day. It doesn't have to be an app or website or program. It could be any form of technology. What do you use on a daily basis that positively impacts your life as a teacher and in your personal life? How do you use technology to be more efficient and effective? Why do you use what you use? Is there technology that you can stop using, or is there a piece of technology that you want to shout from the rooftop about? Now's your chance to share. So get online and tell us all about it. Tag at the EdTech Chat on Twitter and at Mr. Kemp NZ across all social channels, and tell us about what you use. I look forward to hearing from you soon. A tool that has positively impacted the authentic and purposeful use of technology into classrooms and meeting rooms that I have worked in is Sketches School. Every day, Apple technology positively impacts my life. I've always been a fan of Apple tech, especially for teaching and learning. It just makes things easy and far more efficient and effective for learning. When it comes to my daily use of technology, I use my MacBook, my iPad, and my iPhone every day. I love using my MacBook and iPad together using the Sidecar program, so my iPad becomes a second screen. It's amazing. Check it out. I also love the ability to airdrop and copy across my devices with ease. In addition to all of these benefits, there's the incredible App Store, packed full of apps for everyday use and learning. This brings me to my tool of the week that I use in every professional learning session I run with teachers to show them the power of a creation-based tool. Even better, it's free. Introducing Teisua Sketches School. You can find it in the App Store by searching Sketches School. Sketches School is a special edition of Sketches, targeted for a younger audience with a specifically designed interface to make it very accessible to kids. Sketches is the most realistic, versatile, and user-friendly sketching app designed for iPad. I've seen so many amazing uses of this app in school at all age groups. It allows you as a teacher to encourage students to be creative and to share their ideas in a virtual form. My oldest daughter, who's 6, for the last year has been using Sketches School without any training or support, and she creates detailed illustrated books within the app with ease. She loves it, and I can always see her creativity flowing. I highly recommend you take a look at Teisua Sketches School. The link is in the description below. Last week, we talked about creativity in the classroom. If you're interested in learning more, go back and listen to last week's episode. This week, I wanted to focus on note-taking, and leading into the interview I'm about to share with Sylvia Duckworth, it's particularly fitting. As an organized person, note-taking is critical to my success, whether it be staying on schedule, remembering what I need to do, or processing others' knowledge to positively impact myself and others. I take notes in many different ways, shapes, and forms, depending on the scenario, and I've always been a paper and pencil type person. But since getting my iPad with Apple Pencil, I've substituted that into a digital form. Let me pose some questions for you to think about as I share. If you're out and about and think of the next great idea, how do you remember it and record it? For me, I reach for my mobile phone that I always have on me, and I do one of 3 things depending on where I am and what I'm doing. I either create a voice memo to go back to later, I send myself an email with written details, or I put some notes in the Notes app. What do you do? If you're in a meeting or at an event and there's something you want to write down, what do you do? For me, I use my laptop to take notes in a Google Doc that I often share with others, or I use my iPad and Apple Pencil to record it in the Notes app in handwritten form. It really helps me stay on track and control my way of thinking. There are so many ways to take notes, but harnessing the power of technology allows us to save time and be more efficient and effective, something that as teachers, we just need more of. I'd love to hear how you take notes and what technology you use to be more effective and efficient. Please share. I look forward to hearing from you soon. Every week, I bring you a short interview with some of my edu heroes, an engaging learning experience with someone who makes a difference in education every day, with a particular focus or angle towards educational technology. This week, I had the pleasure of chatting with Sylvia Duckworth. Let's have a listen to the chat. Today, I have the honor of speaking with Sylvia Duckworth. You might know her from Twitter as @Sylvia Duckworth with over 47,000 followers. Sylvia and I have been connected online now for many years, and she's been a constant source of inspiration. Sylvia is an award-winning teacher from Toronto, Canada. She's a Google Certified Innovator and Trainer, Apple Distinguished Educator, and is widely known for her incredible sketchnoting. Sylvia, it's a pleasure to have you on the show today. Are you ready to talk about education and technology integration?
Yes, Craig. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about what you're doing right now and what inspires you to do what you do?
Oh, sure. Well, I've been teaching for more than 32 years, mostly in the elementary division, but I retired 3 years ago. And so I'm basically focusing now on sketchnoting and traveling the world, giving workshops to teachers and students and administrators and sometimes even parents on how to sketchnote and the benefits of sketchnoting. So when you ask me about my thoughts on technology, I'm feeling a little bit like I'm not maybe as touch with the current going-ons in technology in the educational world as I was 3 years ago when I was actually living it. Right now, I'm really focusing more on sketchnoting than anything else.
With that, Sylvia, I mean, sketchnoting is such a powerful way to learn about the world and to engage in learning. What excites you about education in general today?
The wonderful ability that all of our students and teachers have to communicate and to collaborate because of technology, I think is extremely exciting. And what better way to exemplify that than the times we're living in now when everyone is doing remote teaching and remote learning? I think it's really come to the forefront how important these technology tools are for collaboration. And the only issue I see with this is the equity problem that a lot of students have, right? But apart from that, I think this whole COVID has brought to light how very valuable all kinds of communication tools are for our students. So anything that has to do with video conferencing, I think is very exciting for education.
Sylvia, you're a Google certified innovator and trainer, and it's something that a lot of people, particularly here in Asia, are heavily into because a lot of schools are G Suite schools and really engaged in using Google for all of the teaching and learning and engaging in learning. What got you into being a Google certified innovator and trainer? And tell us a little bit about why you love this space.
Sure. Well, it kind of just came about by chance. This was way back in 2012. I had just joined Twitter and I was growing my PLN and, was almost obsessed with just checking out everyone's blogs and everyone's podcast and looking at everyone's videos and all their websites. And I happened to cross a tweet to apply to become a Google certified innovator. And I applied for it. I put in a minute video. It's way different now. Like now it's this huge process, right? And it's really hard to get in. It wasn't so hard back then. So I created a video and I knew next to nothing about Google tools, I'll be honest with you. And then shortly after that, once I got in the academy, and that was a huge learning experience for me, the 2 days. But shortly after that, my school adapted Google tools, Google for Education apps, and I became quite proficient at them. And so then I applied to become a trainer, and I got my trainer certificate as well. But what I loved about Google right off the bat was, several things. First of all, the ability to allow teachers and students to collaborate and to be working on documents simultaneously, but also the automatic saving to the cloud feature, which was new, I think, for a lot of us back in 2012. Certainly, that was all like this whole cloud computing thing has really exploded in the past few years. It wasn't around as much back then, but Google really opened our eyes to the possibilities and the wonderful features of saving things in the cloud. It's funny because you used to have to save things all the time, right? Back then, and when you were using different platforms and when you were using different software, you always had to click the save button. And now you don't have to do that anymore. And in fact, my students, when I left them 3 years ago, every now and then we'd come across a new tool that I wanted to use, and there'd be this funny like disk icon. And my students would say to me, "What is that?" I said, that is, you're supposed to hit that. You're supposed to save your work. And they're like, what? Why do you have to save your work? Because they're so used to working with Google tools that this whole having to save something is completely foreign to them. But so those were the two things I loved right off the bat, was the ability to collaborate in live time and the ability to store everything in the cloud without having to save anything.
It's funny that kids think about that, isn't it? With that save icon. I used to do an activity at the end of every school year, getting our primary school kids prepared for middle school, and one of the things we'd do was talk about the way technology's changed over time, and I'd always bring in some sort of small floppy disks, and I'd put them on the table, and I'd say to the kids, what do you think this is? And every year it'd be the same thing, and no one would know. And then this one year, this girl put up her hand, and she was adamant. She knew exactly what it was. And she put up her hand, and everyone else sort of nodded in agreement. And she goes, Mr. Kemp, that's a 3D printed version of the save icon. And it was just so good. So funny to hear the way that she thought about what that meant, because that whole idea of that physical nature of a disk drive that you would save to doesn't exist to them anymore.
And then it makes you wonder what students 10 years from now are going to be saying about our technology, right?
Exactly. It's scary, isn't it, in a way? But it's kind of exciting as well. Sylvia, what's your best advice for educators in relation to educational technology? And I know that you've said that you're a bit out of your depth now, being retired for the last 3 years, but you must have some advice, even from that space, that people listening today can pick up on and take away.
I think it's probably don't be afraid to try new things. Don't think you can't manage to figure out how to do something until you actually give it a try. And I think that's the difference between adults and children. So children are so good with technology because they don't mind making mistakes. They don't mind clicking on buttons and trying them out. And adults are very, very reluctant to take that risk. If they don't know how to do something, they feel uncomfortable trying out new things because they think they're going to make a mistake. So don't be afraid to try out new things. That would be my number one advice for educators.
I think it's great advice as well, Sylvia. Now, you're super well known now globally for your sketchnoting. And I've actually watched your journey over the past sort of 5 or 6 years of when you first started getting into this, and now where I see your name popping up just about every time there's something online. And I think it's just amazing to see that journey evolve. Your sketchnotes are now all over the internet and used to inspire educators every day. Tell us about the art of sketchnoting. What is it? How did you get into it? And why should we look into it?
Thank you for asking. I thought you'd never ask. So thank you. Now I get to talk about my passion, sketchnoting. Well, I came across it about, as you said, about 5-6 years ago. I started to notice these beautiful hand-drawn images on social media. I found out they were called sketchnotes, and I reached out to 2 sketchnoters in education who were doing a lot of the sketchnotes at the time. One was Karen Bosch, and the other was Sylvia Tolosano. I still keep in touch with them today, but they were my mentors to begin with. And I reached out and I said, so how do you do this? What tools do you need? Point me to some resources to get started. And from there, it just became a passion of mine. I loved to sketchnote. I spent a lot of time improving my skills, and to the point where now I really enjoy teaching teachers how to sketchnote and teaching students how to sketchnote. So what is sketchnoting? Some of you out there may be wondering what it is if you haven't heard about it already, but sketchnoting is basically a way to take notes or visual notes. It's also been called visual note taking. And it's a way to take notes in class using text and little drawings or doodles. And when you combine text and these little doodles, they create a sketchnote. And so there's many benefits to sketchnoting. And I like to bring it down to there's lots of benefits, but if you want to keep it simple, first of all, sketchnoting helps you remember things. So there's actually quite a lot of science that backs this up, but not necessarily sketchnoting per se, but drawing, and how drawing not only engages the student, but it also lends to being able to remember something better. And there's studies that I've actually compiled a resource list of lots of studies and articles and blog posts that support the use of sketchnoting in class. It helps students organize their thoughts and to plan out maybe an idea. And it helps students take notes in a creative way using their creativity and their love of art and design. And students who maybe don't thrive in the note taking, in the digital note taking, typing the traditional way, perhaps might do better with a sketchnoting, a visual note taking way of taking notes. And so those are my three main reasons. It helps you remember things, it helps you organize your thoughts, and it lets you take notes in a creative way. But there's other things like it's a calming activity. So when I was teaching all boys from grades 3 to grade 5. And they'd come in after recess, like bouncing off the walls. And so I'd have them sit down and start to draw, start to doodle, or start to sketchnote, put some calming music down, and it really settled them down. Yeah, it's multisensory, so it appeals to students with different learning abilities. So there's listening, there's auditory, there's visual, and there's also kinesthetic component. And so it does appeal to a wide variety of learners. So those are some of the reasons.
Thanks, Sylvia. And you and I connected, and as I said before, I learned about you and about your work through Twitter. Tell us about your choice of professional learning networks. Where do you engage, and who should we be connecting with?
So I use mostly Twitter, but I also use Facebook and more recently Instagram. And then Google Hangouts. I've got a number of chats with a number of different groups on Google Hangouts. For all things Google on social media, listeners should definitely follow Alice Keeler and Eric Kurtz, because they are the Google gurus. And they have tons and tons of content that they tweet out and put on social media every single day. For all things related to inquiry-based learning, I highly recommend that you follow Trevor McKenzie and Rebecca Bathurst Hunt. Are you familiar with them, Craig?
I am, yeah, absolutely. Everyone you're mentioning, it's love them all.
Fantastic. And then for some really creative ideas to infuse technology into your lessons, you need to follow Holly Clark and Tanya Avrath. And I use the word infuse because they've written 3 books with that title, How to Infuse Technology into Your Lessons. And so they've got some really great creative ideas. Those are some of probably my top people to follow.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I appreciate it. And I love the sort of positive stuff that you share on Twitter too. And Twitter often gets a bad name for being a place of negativity, but I've actually experienced the complete opposite of that. And I don't know what your experience is like, but every time I jump on, I feel like I'm around my friends, my colleagues. I learn, I grow, and I pick and choose who I follow and connect with for that exact reason. What's your experience like with that?
Mm-hmm. I agree with you. I think educators, for the most part, I think 99% of them are on Twitter to learn and to share their resources. I don't think it's like the general population who might use Twitter, especially those horrible trolls that just are out there just wreaking havoc on everyone's lives. I haven't seen that in education. I just find that educators are really keen to be there to learn from each other. And I have to say, if it wasn't for Twitter, you and I we wouldn't have connected. I wouldn't have learned about Google Apps for Education. I wouldn't have become a Google Certified Innovator or a trainer. I wouldn't have learned about sketchnoting. Like, it's really caused a rebirth of my career, even towards the years where I was close to retirement. It gave me this whole new platform to express my thoughts in creative ways. It's been wonderful.
It's so great to hear. It's exciting, isn't it, to be able to learn and grow with other people around you that are just so passionate. And Sylvia, you've talked about how in retirement now you feel a little bit disconnected from the EdTech world and IT in general, but what's a tool that you're using right now in your day-to-day work that you really love?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the iPad for sure. I draw on my iPad, although I also can sketchnote on my touchscreen Chromebook, which is fantastic. And a recent gift that someone gave me, a Surface Pro, a Windows Surface Pro. I've discovered a couple of apps that I can sketchnote on that as well. So I'm going to tell you actually 3 of my favorite apps. So my first app is ProCreate. I use that on the iPad. It's only available for iOS, and it's my go-to app for drawing. It's got lots of great features, but it does cost money. So my next favorite app would be a tie between Autodesk Sketchbook, and I love it because that is compatible with any device. So an iPad, a touchscreen Chromebook, or even a Surface Pro, you can use this app. And then the third app is called Adobe Fresco, and it's Adobe's recent drawing app. And I did a little tutorial with it just last week on the Adobe for Education Facebook page. And that has proven to be a fantastic app as well. It's got versions for iOS and for Windows. So those are three of my favorite drawing apps at the moment.
Sylvia, learning's so important to us. And as educators, we're also engaged in that learning process. What's a book or resource that you've been reading lately, or just one of your all-time favorites? And tell us why we should be exploring it.
Okay. Well, I've always been a Google gal, a Google advocate. I love everything Google. However, because of this Surface Pro gift that I was given, I've been exploring Microsoft tools. And I've been super, super impressed with what they have to offer, because now they are free for education. Most of their tools are free for education and are also cloud-based. So there's a resource center very similar to the Google Education's Teacher Center, the Microsoft Education Center, where you can go to as a teacher if you're curious to learn more about these tools. And it's got different courses and modules, resources and lesson plans. And I'm having a lot of fun exploring those resources and learning something new.
Sylvia, just like you have taught me so much from following you on Twitter, I know that the listeners are going to want to connect and engage with you to learn from you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Well, at Twitter and Instagram, my handle is at Sylvia Duckworth, just the way it sounds. I can spell it out for you, but I think you'll probably put it in the show notes. And then I have a website, sylviaduckworth.com, with lots of resources there, including a Sketchnote Fever page. So if the listeners out there are interested in getting started with sketchnoting with either themselves or with their students, please check out my Sketchnote Fever page. There are tons and tons of resources there to get started with.
Sylvia, it's been amazing. Everything you've talked about has inspired me. All of the things that you've mentioned, I'll put in the show notes. Thank you so, so much for your time today.
My pleasure. Take care, Craig. Thanks for having me on your show.
Next week, join me for episode 29 of the EdTech Chat Podcast, when I'm joined by Rachel Lear and Cameron Fox. One of the things I love doing is giving away prizes as a thank you for tuning in, listening, and hopefully subscribing to the EdTech Chat Podcast. Last week, I gave away a book out of my own education collection. To win, you needed to complete the form at bit.ly/edtechwin. The winner has already been contacted directly by me, and it is Karen Ray. Congratulations, Karen. This week, I'm giving away 3 copies of Sylvia Duckworth's sketchnoting books. Incredible. Thanks, Sylvia. To win the books, you need to go to bit.ly/edtechwin and complete the simple form, which will take you less than a minute to do. The link is in the description below. Competition closes on Wednesday, the 18th of November, and the winner will be contacted directly by me and announced on next Friday's podcast episode. Good luck. If you enjoyed today's episode, smash that subscribe button and share it with your colleagues, friends, and families. I really do appreciate your support. Please remember to take 2 minutes as well to rate the podcast so we can reach even more educators and EdTech enthusiasts globally. Please share your favorite parts of today's episode by tagging me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. And don't hesitate to ask me questions that I can answer in an upcoming episode. Remember, you have the chance to win as well. So check out the links in the description for more. I'll see you again next week.
Thank you for listening to the EdTech Chat Podcast, creating a community for educators to learn, share, and grow. If you like today's episode, please don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss another episode, and be in the drawing to win prizes every week. If you know others that would enjoy the show, please hit that share button and brighten their day. Join us again next week for your weekly EdTech Hit with @Mr. Kemp NZ. We'll see you again soon.